to the Build Business Acumen podcast, where we deliver practical knowledge and powerful guidance. Here is your futuristic host, Nathaniel Skula.
So today I'm going to introduce you to Raji Rykert. She is the founder of something called Helping America Now. HAN is a non-profit organisation created by Raji Rykert to address some of the needs of homeless veterans and mentally disabled adults. She has successfully turned 4 decades of business experience into a legacy for helping others. And we talk a lot about homelessness and, the difficulties that people face. This is a great episode, and, it's part of my mission in life to actually raise awareness around these really important topics and to help people. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and let's get stuck into the show. Oh, and do ignore the bird. Raji's got a bird and it makes a little bit of noise, so it's not my usual background noise, but hey, it's a good episode anyway, so thanks for tuning in. And today I'm joined by Raji from across the pond. You're over in San Francisco, right?
Los Angeles,
yeah. And you're involved with a charity that you're very passionate about, and you've been fortunate enough to work hard enough to get yourself to the point where you can do that. And I'm really looking forward to sort of hearing more about you, your businesses and the charity. So I'm gonna let you start really. How did you get to the position of being able to launch a charity in the first place?
Yeah, well, it was many years of evolution. Nate.
Yeah, okay, Nate.
Nat.
Yeah, Nate, Nat, Nathan, Nathaniel.
I've heard you called all of them. So
yeah, it's fine.
All right. Well, Nat, the way that I sort of ended up in the driver's seat of starting this nonprofit was I spent many years working in healthcare. I worked on the business side of healthcare. And again, that's an industry that helps people, serves people. And it was very important to me to be able to make a difference. I think we all have that desire and passion to leave a legacy. We never quite know what that is until maybe further along in our lives, but it was important to me. So from healthcare, while I was in that industry, I also was transitioning into real estate and building a very successful real estate portfolio and renting homes and flipping homes and just everything that goes along with that we see that's become very popular in television and print these days. And as I continued on that journey and sort of had the opportunity to enter another chapter of life where I was too young to retire, but too old to, put my hat on a shelf and just sit and watch the birds, which is kind of funny because I do have several birds that I do sit and watch in my living room. That's a whole nother conversation. I was thinking about some of the people that I had met along this journey of helping with housing and just some of the practical needs and the issues that they were encountering, where an elderly man was homeless for various reasons. A young man in his 30s was homeless. People who had mental illness and disabilities where they had fallen through the cracks of not being properly diagnosed. And through these various conversations, I saw that there was an opportunity to serve a very specific group of people. And we know that there's a lot of conversations in the news about homeless veterans or mental illness and mental disabilities. And it's very complex, as we were having the earlier, banter back and forth about some of the individuals and the profiles that present. You do have people that are on drugs who actually would prefer to be homeless than have the accountability or sober living environment. You have people who are not stable on medications, who maybe they can't afford medications or they don't have familial support or medical support. And so through these various dialogues and working with agencies and case managers, I thought, I see an opportunity to create a nonprofit, which I decided to name Helping America Now, because my focus is US-based veterans as well as mentally disabled adults. And that ties into a very personal story, which I'll share with you in a moment. But while I was exploring this, and I thought it also gives me a way to self-fund things, because I've never been one to ask for help. It's just a difficult thing for me. So I thought, well, I've been successful enough, so I'm going to start to self-fund some of this. But then when the needs start to get greater than the resources that are available, I thought, I've got to start making this known to other people, because there are people that want to get involved and they want to help. They just don't know what to do, or maybe they haven't found the organization that resonates with them. So this was sort of the backdrop to what took place. And then in the course of working with a couple of these individuals and helping them and seeing one woman through being in a stable housing environment, getting on proper medication, she was mentally disabled and had mental illness. She lost 40 pounds and reversed diabetes. And then another gentleman, an older gentleman who had chronic digestive issues. He had been homeless in his 80s, living in the desert, if you can imagine that harsh environment.
Wow.
And came into he was placed at a housing vendor. Within 9 months, his chronic indigestion and digestive issues disappeared, reversed, and he was able to stabilize. And he actually transitioned into a permanent independent housing situation where he lives on his own in a senior living environment and has all the different support services in place now. And he was a veteran. So it just sort of broke my heart to see people suffering and to know that if there's something I can do to make a difference, even if it's just in a handful of people for now, then we're going to make that difference. So of course, then seeing those successful outcomes just fueled my passion even more. And so now I'm just trying to get the word out about Helping America Now.
I think that's great. That's absolutely brilliant. It's lovely to hear that you're sort of doing something, and your infrastructure also is not actually funded by donations, because like that's the biggest issue that a lot of people have with charities. Is like they don't. I mean, I was interviewing a gentleman a few weeks ago, and he's big into charities, and he was basically saying that a lot of charities, they're businesses, aren't they? I mean, that's generally how they're looked upon, like a business. And yes, they get preferential rates and they get assistance, from the government. I mean, certainly in the UK, there's a you get money back if you're a charity and taxpayers come and buy your goods. There's some sort of a money back thing that they get from the government. If you register your details, they can claim back, I believe, the VAT on all the money that you've actually spent there. But it's still an infrastructure that has to be paid for. There are shops that need to be paid for. There are all sorts of things. But what you're doing is you're actually funding all of the infrastructure yourself in order to help these people, right? Is that fair?
That is absolutely correct. Yes, and I would never turn down a donation. I have received donations, and we do those in the form of scholarships that can go either specifically to certain individuals and their needs, or it can go to the general fund. But at the end of the day, 100% of the money goes towards the people that need it the most.
Wow, that's amazing. It must feel really, really good to actually be part of that and to have created it,
Yeah, it's extremely satisfying. I love it.
It's great. So How many people are you kind of helping at any one time?
Yeah, well, at this current time, I have 4 people, and previously we helped about 6 other people. And so it's been small and it's been slow, but it's been impactful. So,
Right.
that famous story about the kid who's throwing the starfish into the ocean, and someone says to him, well, look there's thousands of starfish here on the seashore. How is that going to make a difference? And then the person responded, well, it made a difference to that one. So that's my approach right now. Maybe one day I'll have the tens of millions of dollars to pour into, a magnitude of people and organizations and just sort of supplement what other people are doing. But right now I just focus on 1 or 2 or 3 people at a time. I do work with case managers. So if people come in off the street and they need assistance, then I always do it with they are accountable to someone, they're working with someone, so we can make sure that it's not just a matter of throwing hard-earned money to the wind, but people are genuinely getting the help. And then also it's important to have the strength-based conversations and ultimately empower them to be independent and quote unquote normal, whatever normal is, right?
Yeah.
Normal is a relative term, but to be able to assimilate into society, to have their own place, whether it's home ownership or renting or even a room, whatever it is that keeps them safe, to have meaningful relationships, whether that's restoring them to family members or finding them new friends. So it just becomes a very multifaceted, multidimensional approach. But at the end of the day, it's what we all want, right? To belong, to be safe, to have our basic physical needs met.
Yeah.
So I get to be a part of that.
Yeah, I have a really big affinity, for that. I mean, over here in Chichester, where I'm at in the UK, there are a lot of local churches who've kind of got together, and they've actually partnered with the government and the city council, with the city council really, and another charity that's here, and they're doing quite a lot. They're doing quite a lot around here. They sort of help a number of people to get off the streets. But like you say, it's a difficult call, and I think having a caseworker is definitely the way to go, because someone needs to be there to support them.
Yes.
Because it's pointless just giving someone money. It's not going to help the problem, because the problem exists in the behaviour. I mean, they might come out of, from what I gather, they might come out of the army or whatever and just not know how to make a living. I mean, that could be, or not particularly like the job that they're going to go into, or they might, like you say, have sort of mental health kind of problems. But I think a lot can happen. There are so many people in the US that want to help. I mean, I was speaking to a chap probably on LinkedIn a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, and he's helped a lot of people to get off the streets. It might be a good introduction for you, actually, because I think the more people that can get involved and actually raise the awareness of this, the better. And I might introduce you to the people from Greater Change as well, because this QR code thing, I believe, is a really good idea. I think that what it is for anyone listening is it's a QR code that fits around your neck on a lanyard, and then people can scan their mobile phones and pay on a monthly basis to that individual to help them to go to school or university or whatever it may be. But they have a caseworker. You can find out more about them. It's quite an exciting sort of project, really, and I think that could fit in quite well to what you're doing.
Absolutely. To your point, I love this product that you're describing, because it eliminates the things where you genuinely want to help somebody, but you are reluctant because you wonder, is the money really going to where you're hoping it will go, which is food, clothing, shelter, or is it being used on drugs or alcohol or whatever thing that somebody could be dependent on? And then, there's also the hustlers that are out there doing it professionally, that help making themselves look very tattered and torn. And then at the end of the day, taking off their dirty clothes, getting into a Mercedes and driving off, which we know that is very real. We've seen some of the articles and investigative reporting. So we want to make sure, and I love that QR, what did you call it?
QR code.
Yeah.
It's just one of those codes, really, with the white and black, that you see on
like
lots
a barcode
of cards. Yeah, a bit like a barcode. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what's important is actually understanding more about these people, and are they going to be permanently needing looking after, or are they able to work, and are they able to, providing they're given a helping hand, actually get into something that they enjoy? I mean, over the next few years, I mean, I'm big into like what's going on with AI and machine learning and this kind of stuff. And the problem is that people are not encouraged to learn more and stay up to date with the latest technology trends and this kind of stuff. So in the next few years, there are going to be a lot of people who are just lost because they've lost the skills that they need to, I mean, they might go into prison, for an example, and not actually learn enough about technology. So when they come out, a computer now is completely different to how it was when they went in. and
Yes.
and how you can make money using a computer. So they need someone to say, look, you can either go and get a labouring job and do some physical labour, right? Which for the older people, it's not going to be any good. I mean, I know a chap round here who's got a bad knee, and he's going to have surgery. So he's going to be off for a year. But his mindset is very suited to someone that could build computer programs or build chatbots, or, you know, do something in the technology world, which in essence is going to keep him, you know, make him happy so he can build a business. Because but not everyone wants to build a business. So us entrepreneurs, we can't push people to build a business if they don't want to build one.
Right. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think it's important that when we are working with people, we identify those types of things and qualify the ones, really identifying what people want, right? Because someone who's in their 30s may want something different from, you know, they have their whole life ahead of them, versus someone who's in their golden years and they just want to relax a little bit and take what they can to be comfortable, and, you know, maybe make a contribution here and there. With volunteering, but it's not going to be the same drive and passion necessarily, because there's, every time you use an example, there's always someone that's going to break that mold, right?
Of course.
I know an 85-year-old who's already starting a new business, and he's been on me to help him with that. So, you know, and I have to hand it to him that he would still have that vim and vigor to really reinvent himself and start something new even at that age.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm going to tell my dad that. He's 85. I've been trying to get him to do some Tai Chi with me. He did do some for a little while, and then he just sort of went to stay with his girlfriend, came back, and I was like, so how, he was there for a month. I was like, so Dad, have you been practicing? Oh, no, not really. It was cold. And it's just like, but he had vigor when he went away, and he came back and he was just like, you know.
Yeah, waiting to die.
Well, I hope not. I don't think he is, to be honest.
Okay.
He went to MIT, so he's hugely
great
what's going on. He's very very interesting, but I think that there are so many things that people can do.
Yes,
that it's sort of like where do they start with helping people, and then at what point do you sort of stop helping them? I mean, it's like there needs to be a continual process, which it's like if you're going from here to there, you're going from A to B, at that point, you know, when you're halfway along, you're still heading towards B, but you might need just a conversation with someone to keep you on that path, which I think is missing in society altogether, because we just on our mobile phones, we don't talk to people anymore. And the more I see of it, the more it becomes acceptable. I mean, my dad went to dinner with his lady friend, and I think her grandkids, and they sat there, and the kids were on their phones, and she's on her phone, and he's sitting there. He's like, I haven't got a phone. He doesn't want to waste his time on a phone. Yeah,
right.
And we need to become more accountable for what we do. So, for example, big tech companies like Facebook, etc., when they actually replace humans with robots, which is what's happening in a lot of industries, there needs to be a robot tax, right? And there needs to be an ethical process which helps people. So if, for example, a business is going to make someone redundant, they need to turn around and say, well, okay, we're going to help you. We're making you redundant. Yeah. We're going to get rid of you because you don't have the skills to keep up with our business. However, we know that your personality is this, and we know that with a little bit of help, we can help you to do this. And then that needs to happen.
Well, yes, I totally agree, Nat. And wouldn't you agree that the compassion is the element in that? That so many businesses are profit driven, which there's nothing wrong with making a profit. But I think it's important to embody the philosophy of win-win, because if everybody wins, then there is that aspect of we're now replacing this person. So let's find a way that we can assist them and provide them with something that gives them continuity versus just discarding them after we've implemented this new procedure and we no longer need them, right?
Yeah. I think the major issue is that lack of preparation and lack of how do I put this? It's lack of preparation by employers and also by people who they need to give some thought to. The major problem is lack of preparation by people and by employers. Yeah. And it's almost ingrained in society that, you know, when we get a job, when we finish university and then we get a job, that we are somehow going to be okay for the next 20 or 30 years in that job. But those days have gone, and people need to wake up to the fact that they need to upskill and they need to continually be learning. Every day they need to be learning something new.
Absolutely, Nat. I completely agree with you. In fact, you know, if we're not reinventing ourselves just about every other month because of the technology, because of the new business models, because of just the influx of information that comes our way, right? So I completely agree. And I think that we can be more thoughtful and strategic in how, and when I say we, I mean people like you and me, because we're doing it at a grassroots level, but also organizations, governments, communities, faith-based organizations, the churches, right, working together. And I think there could be this tremendous synergy, movement and synergy if we can all work together to complement what one another is doing versus working in silos. And that's why I think the work that you're doing is so important, because you're a voice and you're bringing so many people into the conversation, really getting them to think, because we're not trying to make decisions for people, right? Who you're going to support as a charity is a very intensely personal decision, right? And we're all passionate about different things. But I think on a global scale, there's so many more things that unite us, and just you providing a forum for people like me and others to be heard and to share that message with others. And if something resonates, they now have a place that they can say, you know, I want to get behind that, and I want to see what's going on, and I want to get the newsletter, and I, you know, and here's $10, and I'll make $10 seem like it's $100 because of my resourcefulness, right? So
it gives people something they can listen to, and they can understand about what's going on. I'm big into like the homelessness problem. I'm big into that because I've seen it. It's been around, you know, it's around in a lot of places, and a lot of people just ignore it. But I'm big into that. That's something that I sort of, I don't know. I think a lot of people are just desensitized, and I think that they are hiding away from what's really happening in the major issues in the world. And there is a lot of poverty. There are a lot of problems. But what's going on right now in the computer industry, certainly within the IBM space that I understand a bit about, they are pioneering a lot of technology which is going to help with supply chains. And what's going to happen in the next few years, perhaps this year, is the cost of food is going to well, not the cost, but the wastage is going to go down, right? And actually, for the smart people who are buying right, the price is going to go down, because supply chains are becoming more effective, and not only that, the nutrition of food is actually going they're easily able to monitor it better, so that they can actually give those foods and vegetables and everything the vitamins and minerals that they need at just the right time, or the pesticides, or even the water. So they're not wasting water, they're not wasting ingredient, they're not wasting fertilizer and this and that, so that we can actually eat better food. And that in itself will be cheaper, or it should be cheaper. I mean, if you look, the price of food hasn't changed really that much. If you sort of look at it, sure, price of more expensive foods, but over in England, if you're very careful, you can go to Lidl or Aldi and the sort of cheaper supermarkets and eat very, very well, actually. But But I think there are just major issues with compassion itself in society. And it's almost like people just sort of hide. They hide away and ignore the problem. And it's almost like, well, they ignore it because they don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to take responsibility for what's going on, you know. I mean, and they don't know what to say to people. And if they're not in a position to help someone, they don't understand that perhaps that person just needs someone to go and and say hello to them. You know, I mean, I spoke to this chap who raised awareness for homelessness by, he's done all sorts of things the past 3 years. He went on a 14th century medieval pilgrimage to Canterbury, and he walked in a monk's outfit. And to start with, it was because, so in the space of 6 weeks, let me start at the beginning, he basically got made redundant. So he lost his job. His girlfriend left him. His dad died, and he got leukemia, all in the space of 6 weeks. Yeah, it's horrendous. So what he did was they sold their house. So he wrote a letter to the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he said, well, can I sleep in a church along the way? Because this is in the winter time. If I get cold, can I sleep in a church along the way? So 6 weeks later, he got a reply from the Pope, and he got one back. No, he got one back from the Archbishop 6 weeks later, and then a week later or two from the Pope. And they said, sure. So he went on this trip, in this monk's outfit, and he didn't pay for anything along the way. I mean, people gave him food, beer in the pubs, because he went to all the medieval pubs, and he told them why he was doing it and everything. And it was like that. Back in the day, you were right what we were saying before we started recording, that back then the churches would take responsibility and they would help people in society. Right. And unfortunately, with the destruction of that comes at a price. So someone, either the churches or a charity or the government, but someone has to take responsibility. And, you know, I'm just trying to raise awareness for it. That's all I'm doing. You know, it's part of my sort of ethos. Yeah. It doesn't pay my bills, but it helps me in my soul, you know.
Yeah. Which is just as important. But, you know, when you talk about that, it reminds me of the educational component to all of this, because as people want to do something, then it's people like you who are creating this platform, right, for different voices to be heard. And there's one thing that you mentioned that really struck me, and I wanted to allude to it, but I had been reading the book, one of the books of Dr. Caroline Leaf. And Dr. Leaf talks about the neuroplasticity of the brain and something called epigenetics, EPI genetics. And in these two things, they describe, and I'll give it to you in its simplest form. I'm not an expert on the topic of this, but my takeaway was, number one, the brain can change. We can actually physically change the brain, which is the neuroplasticity part, and that is through education and learning and growing and really exercising our muscle. The second, you've heard use it or lose it, right? So we're going to use our brains. And then the second part of that, the epigenetics, is reprogramming, literally reprogramming our DNA through thought processes. So whereas there has been the conversation of, well, people are born a certain way and, you know, their father was an alcoholic and so this runs in the family. Well, yes, maybe through their cell composition and DNA, they are predisposed to certain things, but at the end of the day, their brain still has the power to say, am I going to accept this label or am I going to change from this point on throughout all of history? Everything is changing now. And when we make those decisions with resolve and we determine things are going to be different for us, and we take those steps of faith to say, I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I'm just going to keep moving forward, and this is what I'm resolving to do. And daily reminding ourselves, maybe by the minute, if we're having a really bad day, and the description of this gentleman you were, talking about, in 6 weeks, his whole world came apart, but he had to make a decision at some point that he was going to do some soul searching. He was going to take a completely different journey. And in doing that and taking that step of faith and getting out of the boat, so to speak, all his needs were met. I'm assuming he found peace, he found fulfillment, and it was a very eye-opening experience for him. So it's the same way with the people, you know, that we're reaching out to, that I'm reaching out to through the organization as well, that, you know, there's an educational component. Okay, so you've been defined as mentally ill your entire life, but in this moment, if you can be mindful of the things that you're thankful for, you're changing the chemistry and the physical composition, you know, of your thought processes in your brain. Do you want to be responsible for that, or do you want to continue just, you know, whichever the way the wind blows is the way that you go? So, but with that comes personal responsibility, and that in and of itself takes courage, right? Because sometimes it's easier to just sort of lay back and let things go as they may, and then we're victims, and then we find ourselves in situations, and maybe they get worse, maybe they get better, but we're always sort of in a state of flux. And now I'm saying through the empowerment and the message and the help, will give you the help, but you also have an opportunity to find yourself, and this is how you can do it. Take the red pill or the blue pill.
I can't argue with any of that. I think the moment that we realize that we're actually in control, is the empowerment moment that you're talking about, isn't it? And I think we're all victims until we get to that point of realizing that we are responsible for where we've ended up. And we don't like it. We might not like the fact that we've ended up where we are. We might be, you know, suffering in some shape or form, but the moment we make that decision to do something, we can do it, you know. But I think it's also making sure that the people around us encourage us the right way, and actually just making sure that you just don't hang out with people who you don't want to be like, because, you know, I mean, I don't know who said it, but so many people say it, but, you know, you become like the people you hang out with. And I'm very, very careful with the people I hang out with, to the point of just only really spending time with people that I want to spend time with, people who actually genuinely have my best interest at heart. I think that's important to be a judge of character. But if you can't judge character, you need some assistance from someone who can help you at that point. I mean, I've been very lucky to have mentors over the last sort of 8 years who've helped me a lot. And without those mentors, I wouldn't be sitting here with you now interviewing you on my podcast. I don't know what I'd be doing, but it wouldn't be that. So I think it's really goes back to finding someone who has done what you've done and got to where you want to get to is the best advice that I've heard from people. Or you find a handful of people who've excelled in particular fields, and you just hang out with them. I mean, that's what I've done. And you know, we're all on a journey. I'm trying to get somewhere like everyone else, but I'm trying to enjoy my journey. And I think that's the major problem, is that in society, we're all obsessed with getting somewhere. And it's like, well, where are we actually getting to? Like, we can all aspire to build the next PayPal or build the next app or whatever, you know, lifestyle business or whatever it is. But the thing is, we can just get lost in doing that and stressed along the way. And then that can actually derail us. So the sort of goal of, oh, I'm going to build the next PayPal or WhatsApp or whatever and sell it for billions and become a billionaire. To most people, they're not willing to do that. They're not willing to put the work in to do that. And that goes the same for lifestyle businesses. They're not willing to start a lifestyle business. They just want to go home after 9 to 5 and work, right? From 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But the point is that I don't think you can actually do that anymore. I really don't think you can do that anymore. I think that from my own knowledge of just seeing what's going on out there, we are becoming, there are more and more freelancers out there. apparently like 20% of employment is going to be freelancers. The gig economy is what people call it in the next, I think it's the next 5 years is what they're saying, 20% of people. So then if you step back a bit and you look down on the earth, right, and you say, well, how is that going to affect me? I find it fascinating. I mean, been doing a lot of interviews recently with people who interviewed a CEO of an insurance company he was sleeping in his car when he started the business. Pretty much, he was 19 years old when he started it. He's like 47 now. He became a multimillionaire when he was 26. No, 20. I think it was 26 actually, and super interesting guy. But my point is, he was actually saying that why don't you just step back a little bit and think about if you lived on a planet and there was nothing on that planet, okay, what would you put on it? Would you have a car, or would you walk everywhere? Would you have a big 5-bedroom house, or would you have a 1-bedroom? Would you plant vegetables in your garden, or would you have chickens, or would you have a high-powered job and have whatever employees? So it's kind of like a lot of the time it is going back to that. And the problem with people when they're in that position is that they cannot see that themselves. They can't imagine it themselves because they're so stressed with their current situation that they are pulling their hair out.
Well, and I think to your point, Nate, that it's very liberating. If you have the vision, you don't always have to figure out what the end is going to look like. You just have to know that this is what is fueling me to take one step in front of the other, in front of the other. And how I'm going to get there is not for me to figure out. So that there's freedom in that, right? And then the other thing about surrounding yourself with people who can take you to a higher place. You make wonderful contributions to the lives of so many, so you want to make sure you surround yourself with people who are also like-minded in that way. And because it can go either way, right? Like you said, that old saying, birds of a feather flock together. So you want to be around the people that inspire you, that bring out the creativity in you. There's people that sometimes you clash with, but then there's that old saying about iron sharpens iron. So sometimes in those clashes and conflict, we grow even more than if we had just simply been coasting through life, right? And then we've heard the metaphors of the baby chick that fights its way out of its shell, or the butterfly that, comes out of the cocoon, and if you assist it, it will actually die. So we need that resistance to grow and learn and be our best self. So, but to your, the conversation that we were having and you were expressing about the importance of just having the resolve, the determination, because that is an important component to changing anything, right? First that decision, and then let the rest take care of itself.
Yeah, I agree. I think determination's massive. I mean, you must have had to be so determined to sort of get where you've got to. Have you got any insights for people who are in a bad place and they want to get somewhere else?
Yes, I absolutely do. In the last 5 years, I went through a very difficult and traumatic time of transition where a series of things occurred. And it just felt so unfair. And so I felt really derailed in life, disappointed, disillusioned. And it took me about a year to get my bearings again. And part of that was just when I'd lay in bed to wake up that morning and say, thank you for this day. Thank you that I have breath. Creating an attitude of gratitude and just doing one thing. So maybe I'd get out of bed, make myself a cup of tea, or in Indian culture, chai, the spiced tea. So I'd make myself a cup of chai and I'd sit and play with my bird. And that brought me joy. That gave me peace in the moment. And that's how I took care of myself. And then the next day, maybe I'd add one more thing. And then the next day, one more thing. But it did take a year, and I was willing to give myself that space and time, somehow believing that once I got through this journey that maybe other people would be helped. And indeed it was. As soon as I turned the corner and my joy came back, and my vibrant desire to live a full life, and just all the things where I wasn't feeling sorry for myself despite the unfair things that had taken place, it gave me that focus, and then I was able to turn around and share that message of hope with other people and say, you know, you might not be feeling great now, you might be down in the dumps, this happened, and yes, that was terribly unfair and you had no control over it, but in this moment we all still have a choice. And I even remember speaking to a professional therapist about this, and when she said I still had a choice in how I was going to respond, it really made me angry. And I said, but don't you understand, you know, this happened and that happened and this was also unfair. And she said, yes, it was unfair, but you still have a choice. And I didn't want to have that sense of personal responsibility. But after she said it a couple of times, very loving and very supportive, but just a gentle reminder that I am the captain of my ship to some degree, right? I mean, I don't have to figure out where my ship is going. I mean, I figured out where my ship was going. I had determined that part, but I didn't know how it was going to get there, which island I might stop at, or, you know, completely get caught up in a storm that I had no control over, the gale winds that are shredding my sails. And yet I still chose to have my peace. And I was going to do what I could, a hot cup of tea that just made my soul rejoice, or playing with my little bird, you know, and just looking at the wonder of nature and God's creation. So I think that's where that personal responsibility comes in.
With the determination and all this sort of stuff, I think you've got to have that, but we've only really been through these problems so that we can actually help other people, is what I think.
If we can't share our story and help other people with what we've overcome, then our suffering was for naught. Yeah.
But would you say that suffering has built determination, or would you say that determination was there anyway?
In my personal case, I'm a very determined person, so probably I was born with that, and it's interesting because I came from a very interesting background in family dynamic. And did you ever see the movie Little Miss Sunshine? And kind of like how, well, it's a story where this little girl just wants to be in this beauty pageant, and her family, as nutty as they are and sort of all over the map, but they all come together to support her. And that was sort of my experience. You know, there was a lot of interesting and unhealthy dynamics going on in my home, but if I would have told people I wanted to be president, everybody would have rallied around me and said, you go for it, go be president. So it gave me this sense of confidence and determination where I felt fearless to do anything. But I realize that's also part of my personality and disposition. Not everybody is like that, right?
Yeah.
But in being given that sort of temperament and disposition, if there was an obstacle to overcome, I would be the one to overcome it. So I just would not let anything rob me of what I felt like my destiny should be.
Yeah. I resonate with that completely, actually.
And sometimes we start out writing one chapter a certain way, and then something else comes along that changes that story. And there's been plenty of times where I've looked at my life and said, you know, this is a movie I just don't want to be in. How do I get out of it? And sometimes I'd get out of it and sometimes I wouldn't. You know, I had to just ride the thing out till the end. But even with that, you know, I've grown so much as a person, and I'd like to think that I love more deeply, you know, I forgive more easily, that the pieces of the fragments, you know, have been used in a way that really can help others. And, you know, when it's my turn to leave this earth, I can say, you know, I left a legacy and I did something that was beyond me. I think if our vision is too small, then we're going to accomplish it in our lifetime. But then it's too small. So it needs to be something that's so big that when we leave, it continues.
Yeah, you've got a really good attitude. I think that it's really nice to hear that you're doing something for people, you know. I think I was talking to a gentleman the other day with a distillery, and two distilleries actually. And what he said was that he's got a business, but the byproduct of the business is to actually help people. And I think what I like about what you're doing is that 100% of the money goes to the people. And I think that is really, really important. And the more charities that can do that, the better. I mean, obviously, you know, this QR code I was talking about, obviously they have costs that they need to pay for payments and stuff like this. So, you know, that's always going to be a cost to business because you've got to pay for security, infrastructure and this. But Yeah, I'm quite excited about the future. I think that with the new technologies out there, with blockchain, which is in essence the backbone of Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
and cryptocurrencies, people who never had a bank account are going
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have money or some sort of equivalent. So that in itself is going to help change 1 billion people out of
Yep.
poverty.
Yeah.
So we've got some interesting years ahead of us, and I think we keep up the momentum and the awareness around it. It's going to be very exciting.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Nate.
Well, it's been a real joy, but I'm going to have to go because I've got to go and do some tweeting. It's a long story. I don't tweet while I'm talking to people. I think it's quite rude, personally.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Raji. So, how do people support your charity if they want to help you?
Yes, they can visit our website, which is www.helpingamericanow.org. And then they can shoot us an email through the website. There's a button they can just donate directly. There's different scholarships if they want to look at the scholarships and identify something that they specifically want to contribute towards. And we would just welcome the help, whether it's financial, whether people want to stay in touch with their newsletter, with our newsletter, or if they just want to partner with us and they find us there maybe in the local community and they want to join forces. So I welcome everyone and everyone.
Lovely. Well, I might introduce you to someone on LinkedIn. If we're not connected, then we need to get connected on there.
Okay.
And I'll introduce you to someone, 2 people actually, if I can find them. I'll track them down and introduce you. It should be really good actually for what you're doing. Someone quite local to you who's really good at raising money.
Love that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm honored that you took the time to speak with me and learn more about what I'm doing. And I think that the conversation's going to continue. I just sort of have that sense.
Yeah, me too. I'll let you know when it's edited. And thanks so much.
Oh, thanks, Nate.
Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe, and wherever you prefer, share with your friends. And if you enjoyed the show, drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen.